All right, everyone, we are now live on YouTube.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you, Kyra? Or Kyan?
I'm great. How are you? It's good to see you again.
Nice to see you again. Yeah, how are you?
Have you been getting outdoors?
Yes, I have been. Yeah.
Good.
And how about you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Although we did have winter here in Helena last week. So got to get my snow pants out again.
Yeah, we were there over the weekend and we did a tour in Marysville.
Okay.
And Marysville had twice as much snow as Helena.
Yeah,
Good
you
morning,
get all
Mary.
the seasons in 1 week here.
Yeah. Good morning, Russ.
Good morning. I was having a problem hooking up. I just was keying the wrong button.
Right there.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to let everyone know that we are live on YouTube.
Hello.
Okay.
I'm good.
Thank you.
In a
Thank you,
meeting
Colleen.
right now. Talk to you after lunch. Okay, thanks.
We're all here but Jody, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and we'll still start at 9 o'clock, correct? Okay.
Colleen, in case we have technical difficulties, is there a number where we can text you, or what's the best way to let you know that? we're having difficulty. She
I
must-
just called her and talked to her, and then I was able to figure it out on
okay.
my end.
Can you give us what number to call, Russ? Because my internet sometimes wavers.
Okay, I called 406-444-3750.
Thank you.
Mary, I was looking through my file cabinet the other day, trying to find some paperwork from the Fish and Game for my ponds. And I found this from
We're
1986.
just trying to get the link up on the website, and we can get started. So as soon as I tell you that
Wow.
everything's good to go, we can get started.
That's neat, Russ.
Yeah, I think that's the first year the Fish and Game printed maps. And I think they took over from the Forest Service a couple of years before that. I can't remember. That was a long time ago.
That Smith River is such a beautiful area. I got to helicopter over it. It's wonderful.
Oh, really? In what capacity do you do that?
Well, a friend of mine is a rancher there who owns
Oh.
a helicopter,
Wow.
and he took me around and we dive bombed everything. It was great. Do you know Bill Galt?
YouTube channel.
Bill, yes.
We're trying to get the link up onto the YouTube channel. So as soon as it's ready to go, I will let you know and we can start the meeting. Okay?
Well,
Sorry.
thank you, Colleen.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Morning.
Beth.
Good morning, Beth. If you see hear a note from me on your answering machine, please ignore it. I'm here.
I picked it up and I checked with Colleen. She said you were on, so
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I think the Zoom link actually opens up at 8, but of course we don't start until 9. So yeah. Good to see that you were an early bird though.
Well, that's true, except that it allowed me to run in there and clean a really nasty closet that needed cleaning. So you have a defined time and you just hit it and go for it. Got it done. Thank you.
That's great.
Wouldn't you know, the day we have a meeting is the first sunny day we've had here for a week.
It's cloudy here in Billings.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it is here in Glendive too, and we had a lovely rain last night and yesterday. It's just, this has been awesome. We needed it so bad.
Kathy, we were supposed to get rain and we didn't, we got very, very light rain. So we missed it. We were hoping for
Missed
it.
Well, it did come this way. It's not enough, you know, we'll never say it's enough. But, and I don't know how much we got, but another good half inch, I think.
Wow. I was this past weekend up what's called the Red Hill Road that goes north of Lavina and into the big snowies and little snowies. And there's a big lake there. And it was a shallow lake on the Red Hill Road that for the first time ever,
Right up.
I've seen it, it was totally dry.
Yeah. We have several on our place that are dry now. I told my brother, I think we should get a backhoe out there or something and kind of make it deeper now. My granddad had created these way back in the very early 1900s before you had a lot of regulations with dynamite. Fun to do that again. We have some really old video, black and white video of him doing that.
Wow.
It's fun because he goes, wait for it, kaboom, and then he goes, ow, ow, ow. He was way too close. It's fun.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Director Warsack.
Another exciting day.
Thanks for attending the Big Hearts banquet the other night.
Well, I love that thing. I always enjoy going there. It's just so much fun. I mean, and well, Chairman Kip, you understand my previous interaction with it, and from the licensing thing and working on some of those bills that got the ability to donate license to wounded warriors and all those other things. So, and the terminally ill children. I mean, that was probably one of the funnest things, or the most, I shouldn't say fun, one of the most rewarding things I did when I was in licensing was to work on that stuff. And it's amazing. And especially what the Big Hearts does, and takes the whole family together and bring them together in that thing. So it's pretty cool.
So Russ, what was that?
So what it is it's through Montana Outfitters and Guides Association. They've got a group called the Big Hearts Under the Big Sky. And what they do is they get licenses, and you can donate your license now to a wounded warrior. And what they do is they'll take them or terminally ill children on trips at no expense to them, and they bring their families with them.
Wow.
So one of the first ones we did that I worked with them on, it was a young child with what they call Pygeria's disease. And he was 12 years old. And he aged to the point, like he looked like he was 80. He was real frail, and it's that real quick aging thing. So that's what he wanted to do is to shoot a deer in Montana. So we got that together, and he was so frail that he got to pull the trigger, but he couldn't have the rifle against his shoulder because it would have broke his shoulder. And he ended up being on Good Morning America. The family sent me a lot of pictures of it. And he talked to Good Morning America how special it was to be able to hunt. And they had a picture of him with looked like Elmer Fudd hat on, a blaze orange Elmer Fudd hat. And he looked like he's 80 years old, smiling in this thing. It was just, so the family connected with me after he passed away and just said that was just such a neat thing in his life, and could never repay everybody that worked on it. So that's the kind of trips they bring, and it's just such a good cause from my perspective. Do the right thing to bring that passion in where people can really enjoy it. So I've always tried to go there and support it and applaud them. So. But it's it's neat. So
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's we do. I think we do a lot of good things in the department that I don't think a lot of people know that what's behind it. And we want to continue, celebrating that and publicizing it and doing things with the Parks Board, with Commission, with different things, and show the people that we are doing a lot of things for them. So figured that. Oh. So,
I don't see,
Kip and Director Warshak, it looks like we are able to go onto the website live. So we should be able to start the meeting.
okay,
okay, we're short Jody. I'm not seeing him up here anywhere.
no, I'm not either.
Okay, well, it's a few minutes after 9 and it's time to call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin with saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. Our first order of business is the approval of the minutes. Two of the minutes that we're going to be approving were last year when Member Moe and Member Brown were on the committee. The third one is from this year where I joined and Member McLean and Jody joined. So does the board members have any questions regarding the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, my only question is really just to express a concern. The form of the minutes has changed considerably, and in my view, to the better, in that they are much briefer, perhaps too much so. I'm concerned that for a member of the public or the press who wanted to understand whether there was any nuance to a particular issue, they would have to attend the entire meeting virtually in order to do that. In the case of the discussion that we had about the acquisition of Summers Beach, when you read that particular meeting minutes, you would never know that it was a topic of considerable conversation among the board or what the concerns expressed by the board were. And so while I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the minutes, I just want to put that thought into Director Warset's mind in terms of how transparent we are, what the right balance is in terms of, because our minutes used to be so voluminous that it was a tough slog. So this is definitely an improvement, but it may have gone the other way. But other than that, I'm prepared to make a motion when the time is right, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Member Brown, do you have any comments from the last year's meetings or minutes?
I do not.
Okay, I guess we we don't have any other comments, so if someone would like to make that motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Member Moe.
I move the Parks and Recreation Board approve the minutes of the October 29, 2020, December 16, 2020, and April 27, 2021 board meetings.
And I'll second it.
Okay, Member Moe moved to approve the minutes, and Member Brown second that motion. Thank you. Let's vote on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. Okay, so this motion passes 4-0. The next order of business is for board members. Does anyone have a report?
Chair, Member Loomis is trying to
There he is.
Yes, okay, we found him.
Good morning, Jody. Can you hear us now, Jody?
Gotcha.
Okay. Question for Colleen. Now that Jody has joined the meeting, do we need to back up and have the full vote for the approval of the minutes? Are we good?
We could go back and do a motion if chair, that would be appreciated, please.
Okay, let's start over.
And Chair Kip, if I may say one more thing, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have Quentin Kujala on the line that he would like to say something in regards to the meeting or to the minutes.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay, so the first order of business is to approve the minutes. Do we have any questions regarding the minutes? And Mary, would you like to repeat your comments?
I
He's already unmuted. It's 563.
The comment that I had was that the minutes are for the benefit of the other board members. The minutes are, in my view, an improvement over our previous format in that they're much shorter, perhaps too much so. I would like to see a summary of the board discussion, not a blow by blow, but a summary of general concerns, so that future board members, members of the public and members of the press can get a sense of which part of the meeting they might want to look at, or whether there were historically any concerns about a particular item. But having said that, I would be ready to make a motion.
Okay, any other comments from board members? Okay, understand Quentin is with us and he would like to speak.
Yes, Chair Kip, thank you. I just wanted to quickly express my appreciation, Board Member Moe, for that clarification that you just alluded to in this second visit to minutes. We have indeed made a transition in format. I'm looking to make them easier to assemble, easier for the board members to review and edit or approve or not. And hopefully also there's some additional utility that the public, to your point, Board Member Moe, realizes as well. And then also for those folks that engage both the Parks Board and the Fish and Wildlife Commission, looking to make the format the same. So we certainly hear, your comments, and we'll look to, make that sort of adjustment, and hopefully over a short time, we can come to a confirmation that the balance that you speak of, Board Member Moe, is just right. So just wanted to say thanks and message heard, and we'll see you next time with respect to some refined minute format again. Thank you, Chair Kip.
Thank you. I guess we're ready for a motion now.
Mr. Chairman, let me see if I find it. I move the Parks and Recreation Board approve the minutes of the October 29, 2020, December 16, 2020, and April 27, 2021 board meetings.
Thank you. A second, please.
I'll second it.
Okay. Member Brown seconds that motion.
If we could ask for public comment, this now would be a good time.
Do we receive public comment on this, on our minutes?
Anything?
There is no public comment on the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Colleen, for that clarification. Let's vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay. The motion passes with a vote of 5-0. So we'll move to the next board member reports. Next order of business is report from the board members. Does anyone have any activity to report?
I do.
Okay, Member Brown, please.
Yeah, so on Sunday, May 9th, Mother's Day, my wife and I drove down to Tongue River Reservoir State Park and to the Rosebud Battlefield State Park. And I had been there before, but it was a nice drive, spring day. And we got to Tongue River, and there was Raymond Shell, who is the manager of Tongue River Reservoir, and Park Ranger Spencer Morris. It was about 1:30 in the afternoon on Sunday, and there they were out in their pickup, picking up garbage. And I thought that was commendable that they were working on a Sunday in the middle of the day. And the Tongue River Reservoir State Park looked in great shape. Everything was clean. There were a few RVs there camping. There were a number of people there fishing. And so it looked to be in great shape, thanks to those two guys overseeing it. And then we went to Rosebud Battlefield. And this is all kind of southeast of Hardin. And I've been there before. And the signage is very informative. And you just stand in awe and think of what happened there in the 1800s. And again, the signage really helped put it all in perspective. So if you guys haven't been there, it's a really fun trip to do.
Thank you, Member Brown. I would like to give a report. I went to Bannock State Park a week ago and visited with Dale Carlson. Dale has been the manager at Bannock for 17 years. I did not realize he had been there that long. And he came to Bannock from Makoshika, where he was the manager. He reported to me that Bannock Days is back on this summer, and that's a big event for Bannock. It's 2 days. It's July 17th and 18th. They've had as many as 7,000 people there over those 2 days in the past years. Who knows what will happen with this summer, how excited people are to just get out again. I wanted to see the work that had been done on the park. There was a volunteer group that spent some time there, and they installed 500 plus feet of boardwalk. And they also helped rebuild the stairs going up into the Mead Hotel and the porch and awning over the Ovid store. That was very interesting because they used new lumber on the Mead and the Ovid, but they had some type of treatment that they put on the lumber that aged it. So it didn't look like shiny yellow boards. It looked like it had been there forever. So the park is in really good shape, just looked wonderful. One of the things I noticed, and I forgot to ask Dale, was there was no sign at the highway. So my guess is there's a new one being built out there. But when I got there, he was having a meeting with the prospective summer employees, and my timing was just perfect. So that's the end of my report on Bannock. Anyone else?
Yes, this is Kathy, and I'd just like to report, even though I missed the ceremony, we did have a ceremony last Thursday. We've got water into Makoshika to the campground. So for at least 12 campsites. Wonderful. It was, that's pretty exciting for us. I
Thank
missed it
you.
because I had a family emergency, but
Oh, no.
Chair Kip?
Go ahead, Jody.
Yeah, thanks. Just a few days ago, I was cruising through the state, and since I was on the eastern part of the state, we stopped for a quick visit at Makoshika. I'd never been there, and very, very nice facility. Really kind of just neat. I was real impressed with the entrance to the park, how when you go through the town of Glendive and then you go underneath the railroad tracks there, and then on your way out, and then they've just kind of the entrance to it with the lights and the walkway and the bike path. It's kind of a neat presentation how you come into it and then it opens up and all that fantastic view. And so we kind of did the quick tour and checked out the visitor center, but it's a really nice facility. So at least now I can at least say that I've seen it. So.
thank you, Member Lewis. That to me is awesome. And I love the A-frame up there for meetings and so on. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay, if that's all the reports we have, thanks for those reports and thanks for getting out and seeing our state parks. The next order of business is Director Warsak's agency report. Director Warsak, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members. I'm just going to give a quick update of where we're at with the Hell Creek agreement and what we're doing on that. Corps of Engineers, you've got one of the items today. The last item is the concession agreement, which we've signed, the Thomases and myself. The issue is the Corps is looking at it, has some concerns with it. So what we've done is I made an opportunity for them to fly up here on the 3rd of June, and we're going to fly over to Hell Creek. I'm going to bring Chairman Gray along with, and we're going to meet with the Thomases and do a review from that air and see what we really need to get this thing fixed up and up to the standards and get all that behind us so we can do a smooth transition. So the Corps is willing to come up. They're bringing, they got a new administrator that's involved with it, and one of the colonels from Omaha is flying into Denver and then flying up here. And we'll bring them over and look at it from the air with a helicopter and get this thing off dead center and moving forward. And at that point, then we'll work with the Little Shell to have that transition plan put together, and they have to reapply to get the lease then. But that's the latest of where it's at. It's been a delay. We worked with, you've probably got from letters from different outfitters that had issues with her. I talked to Mary Beth Kibler last night. They're able to work through it, but I told her we're moving as fast as we can to get this thing done. So I just wanted to give that kind of that status. And then I'm actually going to turn it over to Beth Shoemate, and she can give a good update. She's got everything ready at her hands. I don't have it in front of me now, but I want to hear from her anyway. So appreciate it. And that's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Beth?
Yes, good morning, Chair Kip, members of the board, and Director Warsak, Beth Shoemate, Division Administrator with the Parks Division, and just wanted to provide a quick update about a few things that we have going on across our state parks at this time of the year. Thank you. I just want to, first of all, acknowledge some of the board members' comments in regards to the dedication that staff bring. And you are correct, Member Brown. We couldn't do what we do if we worked on a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 schedule. Oftentimes that is very much the case where we have most of our park staff working very hard over the weekends, especially this time of year, and getting those parks up and running and ready to welcome the millions of visitors that are about to come into those parks for all sorts of different services and programs and to just enjoy those amenities. So just want to say thanks for acknowledging the hard work that they're doing, as well as those volunteers, like you mentioned, Chair Kip, at Bannock State Park, which, you know, if it wasn't for a lot of those volunteers, a lot of that work just won't get done either. So really appreciate that. I just wanted to, speaking of visitation, we all know that we kind of have what I'm calling this human influx to the outdoor natural world. somewhat in light of COVID and for just the fact that we have a whole lot of people traveling, especially more on the roads than in the air. And so just want to take a quick mention about our state parks visitation. We do have our quarterly report that is all produced and ready to be posted on our website. And so I just wanted to touch on a few of those highlights. What we typically do for the board and visitation updates is to have an annual report that is actually then sent out to the board. So this is just kind of some highlights of that quarterly report, which is why that's not quite in front of you, but we will be posting that on our website in the near future. And so during the first quarter, we did have some relatively mild weather in January and March that did fuel much of those estimated increases. And some of the increase that we saw was we had 400,000 visitors to state parks between January and March. And when we compared that to last year, this represents an increase of 20%,
Wow.
for a net gain of just about 70,000 visitors. And when we compare that number to 2019, this is nearly an 80% increase, which is just about 170,000 more visitors just in the first 3 months. The day use and camping occupancy are projected to rise across the state, of course, in the spring and summer months. And we also had camping during the first quarter was an estimated 18% higher than what we've seen in years past. And our camping reservations are at an all-time high. I will also share just some general park updates. And I wanted to just kind of go across some of the different regions. I don't have a park update specific for each region, but I do have some that have been in front of the board that you have taken recent approval on some action items, especially last year. And so I just wanted to highlight some of those key projects. So Region 1, I'll start there, Summers Beach State Park. You'll also be seeing this as one of the agenda items later on in the meeting in the capital program. We now have the passage of House Bill 5 through the legislative session. And so we now have the legislative authority totaling $4.9 million for the acquisition and development of Summers Beach State Park. So we anticipate finalizing the purchase agreement in the next few weeks. And we have submitted the Land and Water Conservation Grant application to the National Park Service, and we're just awaiting the approval of that application. We know that we already have preliminary approval there. We then intend to conduct a rigorous public collaboration process to develop a long-term management and site development plan for Summers Beach. But currently, we are working hard on an interim plan that is intended to direct just some of the basic park management activities and operations while providing for resource management direction. As we know, Summers Beach has very much been an important outdoor recreation resource for decades. The public has been utilizing what we've called the Sliders property for a long time. And so very much we anticipate the public will have that expectation to be able to access that site as soon as that purchase agreement is indeed signed. So we have staff here on this call. Actually, we have the Region 1 staff for any of those detailed questions as far as it relates to any of those operations and detailed management plans. We have Jim Williams, the regional supervisor, as well as Dave Landstrom, the regional park manager, at the ready in case you have some detailed questions. So moving on, we have Region 2, Fort Owen State Park. We heard a lot about Fort Owen down in the Bitterroot. If anybody hasn't been there, it's really a very small park, just 1 acre, but we expanded now to 2 acres. So when I say small, it's really small. And it's literally surrounded by a ranch down in the Bitterroot Valley. And so we, of course, have to work really well with that ranch owner, and we have a really great relationship with her and her family. And so we have been able to do what was last year, a little bit of a land swap with that 1 acre property, which has allowed us to be able to construct and improve the parking lot as well as the incoming road into that ranch. So the public coming into Fort Owen will have a much better flow of traffic, and we'll be able to provide for some buses that can park there, especially for those larger field trip opportunities. Park staff have also developed some new directional and regulation signage, and they are working to put that in place. And we're hoping to have Fort Owen back up and open around June 15th. We have gone through an extensive cultural resource survey effort over the course of the last, about 6 months now, and have had some really key findings within that park. It is considered one of our more significant cultural parks in our system. So a really neat project. And we also have some of those really neat artifacts that we have now found in doing that project. And so we will be preserving those for all to see, and hopefully being able to better display them at Fort Owen. And we also have a really active friends group at Fort Owen that they have actually secured some additional grant funds. And we also have the State Parks Foundation that has been so helpful in securing a very large private donation in order to do a lot of this work. And so just need to give a shout out to the State Parks Foundation on the success of that. And we also have, I believe, the regional staff at the ready to address any questions as well. Lauren Flynn and Macy McPherson, the park manager out of Region 2. So moving on now to Region 5, we have the Lake Elmo Asian Clam Removal Project. This project is coming together really well in light of the cross-divisional approach that we have taken there. And the reservoir is filled for summer recreation. We currently have open fishing limits with no size restrictions. So if you're going to go fishing at Lake Elmo, now is the time. I believe it was just in the last month that we had a new record for smallmouth bass at Lake Elmo. So definitely a great place to go fishing right now. The funding continues to be secured as a few grants are left to be secured there. We have been successful in securing a recreational trails grant for $50,000 that will be able to improve some of those trails that are around the lake footprint. The draining is due to start September 1st, 2021, and that will be coordinated, of course, with the irrigation district for a near total drawdown by October 15th. And the construction of some of those improvements at Lake Elmo will begin November 1st, and we hope to have them completed by May 2022 for the full summer recreation season starting next year. So that's Lake Elmo. And I also have out of Region 5, Pictograph Cave Rockfall. I believe, well, actually, I don't know if we mentioned this last time or not, but we had a significant rockfall event in February 2021 and on one of the cliff faces as you're coming into the Pictograph Cave State Park, right near the entrance area. And thankfully, no new rockfall has taken place. We've had quite an extensive geotechnical assessment of those cliffs in the last few months. And we also have some new signage that has been installed to address any of those safety concerns. Park staff have also completed a cultural survey, and we are just now awaiting approval from SHPO to modify a 70-foot section of the trail to reroute around that rockfall area and just to protect visitors into the future. So we also have Region 5 staff, I believe, on this call as well, in case there are any specific questions as it relates to Lake Elmo or Pictograph Cave. I believe we have Terry Walters, the Regional Park Manager, and I think Mike Ruggles, the new Regional Supervisor for Billings area. So I'm now going to just turn really quick to some of our staff and hiring. We do have a few staffing vacancies in a few different parks still, and this is really due to a lack of returning seasonals, as well as just applicants in general. At this moment, we are still down a few of our tour guides at Lewis and Clark Caverns State Park, as well as a ticket seller. We are utilizing every recruitment measure possible, including working with local job services, but it's just a concern, especially around the very busy Bozeman area where housing prices are a little bit difficult. And so it's just an issue that we've been seeing in some of our parks across the state this year. And now I'm just going to turn really quick. I also want to mention the outdoor recreation and trail programs. So we just recently signed the decision notice on the recreational trails program. This is a federally funded grant program where we receive about $1.5 million in a federal appropriation annually. And then we allocate those funds out to just about every type of trail project you can think of. Eligible activities include those construction and maintenance related activities, as well as the purchase of trail equipment, especially grooming equipment, and the development of education or ethics programs. And so you'll be seeing some of that information as well posted on our website, and a press release going out soon to announce those successful grantees. So that's all I have for my administrator report. Does anybody have anything that they want to ask questions about?
Member Mo?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Beth, I'd like to know a little bit more about Summers Beach. I don't know if that's an appropriate question for Mr. Williams or Mr. Landstrom, but I applaud you, first of all, on doing a long-term plan, but also an interim one. And I'm just, I recall from our discussions earlier that with the heavy use of that area, particularly it seemed like right about now, how we have prepared for that. Is it closed right now? And how are we going to staff it and park, that kind of thing?
Yeah, Dave?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that.
Sure.
Yeah, good morning, Chair Kip, members of the board, Director Warsek. I'm Dave Landstrom. I'm the Region 1 State Park Manager. And Member Mo, the property owners, that would be BNSF and the Slider family, posted those properties this summer as no trespassing, awaiting the closing, which is, I think, quite near, and we'll hear more about that later. But so as not to have to deal with the issues that they did last year with the crush of humanity on that property, they posted it this year. And as that water comes up on Flathead Lake, that demand decreases and the water is on its way up right now. So it kind of solves itself once the lake hits full flow.
Follow up, if I might. Longer term, what about the parking? Have we got a plan for that?
We, Director Mo, or Member Mo, we are working on two options for parking, for public parking use of the site. The first is negotiations with BN in hopes that we can use one of the parcels that they own, the one that is furthest north, to develop parking there. And if that fails, then we will, we have a concept plan to provide temporary parking on the park itself, on the current Slider property. And it's intended to be temporary in nature so that once we do a full public process to determine the build out, it may end up remaining there or it may move. So we're going to, if we do it in that way, in that location, we'll do it in such a way that it's temporary parking.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I have a question for Beth concerning Bannock. Wondering what's happening to the sign that's out on the highway. Was it vandalized? Is it just time to replace? And second, when Bannock Days does happen and you do get 7,000 people there, parking has to be an issue. Is the parks considering any kind of temporary parking area?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Kip, for some good questions about Bannock Days and as well as the sign. I actually took a note as soon as you mentioned that earlier in your report out to check in on that sign situation. I am not familiar with what happened to that highway sign, so we'll definitely be checking in on the situation there, and we'll get that more detailed answer back to you. As far as Bannock Days, this is definitely a team effort. And when I say a team effort, I'm saying the entire agency literally comes together to host this event. And the Region 3 staff, from enforcement that helps monitor the incoming flow of traffic. I actually attended Bannock Days a couple of years ago, right at the height of the day on Saturday, which is extremely busy. And you literally are backed up in line waiting to be shuttled in by one of the shuttle vans. And there is some temporary parking situations that we are able to tap into, thankfully, because of some adjacent landowners that allow us to be able to park on adjoining private property there. And so it's very much all hands on deck. We even bring down our entire AmeriCorps members, which is the equivalent of about 21 AmeriCorps members that come down to provide that assistance as well. So it's very much a shuttling of getting people in and out so they don't have to walk literally a mile or 2 miles just to be able to attend Bannock Days. But yeah, any of those other questions, or if you have other details, I can certainly follow up with some more detail from the park itself as well.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from members of the board? Okay, with that being done, our next order of business is an informational update item presented by Ken Bishop from the Fish, Wildlife and Parks. I understand that this is a informational update, so there will be no need for public comment after the presentation. So this is the 2021-2022 planning programs. Go ahead, Ms. Bishop.
Great, thank you, Chair Kip, members of the board, and Director Warsack. It's really great to have the chance to just speak with you a little bit today about our state parks planning program. I put together a little bit of a slide deck, so I wanted to share my screen and kind of use that as a guide to direct some of my remarks here today. First of all, I will also just say that I joined state parks back in March of 2019. And so I'm relatively new and really excited to be learning a lot about the diverse state park system that we do have here. I'm not going to also use the time exclusively to talk about some of these state park management plan updates. I know that we're going to dig into that in the future. But I did want to at least use some of my time today to talk a little bit about the planning role and kind of what that encompasses for the state park system. Talk to you a little bit about management planning efforts and just kind of how we utilize those in our system and across the agency. And then just touch a little bit on some preliminary updates in terms of a few parks and sites that we are looking at here in the coming months. And so first of all, I know that you in your materials have had the chance to potentially review a few of the things that I wanted to discuss today, but really wanted to just start at the kind of 10,000 foot level and talk to you a little bit about kind of what planning is for our park system. There's really kind of three main areas that we kind of think about in terms of planning for our parks. I come across a lot of different kinds of initiatives that kind of touch planning. That can include things like our SCORP, which is the statewide comprehensive outdoor recreation planning effort, which is a 5-year long-term plan that helps to guide outdoor recreation and conservation considerations for the state. And that often is done in collaboration with others, is a year-long process and involves a number of listening sessions. I know that members Mo and Member Brown would, probably recall very much kind of a lot of what that work was comprised of. A lot of other things that maybe touched my desk or different kinds of policy and regulatory issues that we might be looking at that contemplate both state parks and outdoor recreation, but also just kind of look at those from the lens of other public land management agency proposals, projects, and things that we have special interests or concerns about. And a lot of the work that we're doing, particularly now, is trying to just do a better job of using data, collecting information, and conducting research to inform a lot of the policy work, our planning work, and so forth. You heard Beth this morning talk a little bit about our visitation effort. And so an example to maybe point to is a few things that we've been trying to do to improve the accuracy of how we are counting people across the state. As you can imagine, it's a pretty complex process, number of entrances, and it probably never more important as we're seeing record number of visitors coming to our parks to enjoy themselves. And so there's a number of things I guess I just wanted to kind of jump into my presentation with so that you potentially see kind of how some of these things intersect, the various things that we're doing. And then I guess I would also just offer that this work is really upheld by our public processes and the input that we might receive from advisory groups, some of the citizen commission groups, and others. And so we certainly take those, that kind of feedback very much into a lot of our planning. I wanted to move a little bit into just talking about management plans in general. I realize that some of you may be rather new to this, and so I guess I just wanted to take a few minutes before we jump into some more explicit discussion of plans, just to kind of highlight kind of the importance of these efforts and kind of what they are. And so first I'll just say, as you might imagine, management plans are critical to a lot of what we are doing. They really, in my view, kind of help us lay a bedrock foundation and really a roadmap to consider the various considerations that we need to weigh for any and all of our state parks. And that could include thinking about recreational opportunities and access. That can also include the good work that my colleague Rachel Reckon does in terms of thinking about cultural and historic resources in our role in conserving and protecting those resources. That also might include conversations with our colleagues in the Fish and Wildlife Department, of course, as we think about any kinds of concerns or opportunities they see in terms of our role in protecting habitat and wildlife and fish species across the state. As you know, we are very fortunate here in Montana to live in a place that has abundant resources, and we take our role in protecting those very seriously. And so these management plans look very carefully at those kinds of issues. We also think about educational and interpretive opportunities that we can offer at our parks. Where are there maybe both specific opportunities for our volunteers or our staff to take on, and then also how can we partner with some of the wonderful nonprofit organizations, community groups, and others to benefit from some of the expertise and knowledge that they might be able to bring to our parks. And then, of course, we're just overall thinking about the operations of these parks and how can we smoothly run what is a very, very large park system with the limited staff that we have. We think about public safety. We think about a number of different things that, again, will help us uphold the ideals and the values of the agency. I wanted to also just mention that one of the things that was very instrumental to us last year was the board's approval of the classification and investment strategy. And I know that Beth is later today going to talk a little bit about some updates on kind of our implementation of that policy. One of the core things that has happened in the last year, which is really exciting, I think, for us, is to develop what we call foundation documents. These are planning documents that really help to kind of lay the groundwork for each of our parks. They also start to identify various features, values, attributes, and key factors of consideration in terms of planning. And so I know that you're going to hear a little bit more from Beth about that, but I just wanted to kind of point to those as well in terms of their role in really kind of being an initial phase of our development of management plans. So as noted in the agenda, I wanted to discuss 3 specific projects today. And before I did that, I wanted to make sure, I know we've got some new members. Again, I'm pretty new to Montana myself, and so I'm still kind of getting used to the orientation of mountain ranges, rivers, and state park administrative regions and so forth. So just wanted to use this time a little to just kind of point to where some of these things are in the state. I know most of you are familiar, but just in case no, the first project that I would like to discuss is up in Region 1, which is the Flathead Lake Island. I will then move to Missouri Headwaters, which is in our State Park Administrative Region 3, outside of Bozeman, near Three Forks. And then we'll talk about the Smith River. The Smith River was already mentioned. It sounds like many of you are familiar with that. It is definitely a very important resource and one that we're very proud of in our state park system. And maybe just before I jump in, I also just want to offer that today I would really like to just use this time to give you kind of an introductory orientation to some of the thinking and just conceptually how we are approaching some of these planning efforts. I know it would be very seductive to try to really dig into a lot of the details of these plans. And I know that over time we will be able to provide some of that both to you as well as through our website in our planning processes. At this point, really our priority is to develop and design processes for planning that we feel really good about, that we feel that takes into consideration public comment, public feedback, and then also timelines that are appropriate to the various considerations, which could include EAs, looking at regulatory issues, policies, both internal to state parks and beyond. And so just want to say that we're really just kind of getting started. This is really just a preview, and we certainly will be allotting a lot more time to delve into each of these projects as we move forward. So I also maybe will mention that as you are aware, there are a number of experts and other subject matter experts, from the various regions across the state that also may be able to address any questions or also add to this discussion. And then we also have our attorney, Zach Zipfel, here today to answer any questions about the board's authority, rulemaking, and other regulatory matters. But again, I really just wanted to use this time now as just kind of a preview to kind of what we have underway. And I know a lot of this was discussed in your board materials. And really to just kick things off in terms of our Flathead Lake Islands effort, you know, this is synonymous with, in some ways, what we are looking at across all of our parks. You heard earlier about growing visitation, and one of the key things that we know that we need to look at are just thinking about our recreational opportunities and access, and that balance of kind of our role in terms of conserving important natural resources, cultural resources, and so forth. And so in some ways, you know, just as other park systems, we are really trying to really gain a laser focus on kind of just really finding that right balance and making sure that we are diligent in our role in terms of our stewardship of these important lands. So the Flathead Lake Island project, just to really kind of kick things off, as you may have discovered, there are kind of 4 units, so to speak, that comprise this effort. And Wild Horse Island is one that we are looking at in terms of its synonym, a little bit how it's congruent in terms of its features and access and use to some of the Flathead Lake units around the lake, the more kind of land-based units. And so the effort to date has really kind of focused on Cedar, Bird, and then O'Neill Islands, which were designated as wildlife habitat protection areas. Really kind of the crux of our situation here is over time we've seen increasing use recreationally of these spaces. And so we're really just looking at mechanisms that we can take to kind of address some of those issues, concerns of public safety, concerns also just of kind of trying to designate areas where visitors might be able to access or stay on these islands when they do visit. You know, I think just as some of our other management plans, the 2009 plan that was laid out for this project it's really served us well, but we recognize now that there have been some shifts in kind of especially this region in terms of visitor use. And so just really kind of looking at kind of the impacts of that and kind of what we can do. I'd love to move on to kind of Missouri Headwaters, and then I'll move to the Smith, and then I will save some time for some questions. And really the report on Missouri Headwaters is pretty kind of brief at this point. The board, I think, was made aware of this back in December too, when we were meeting at that point. We have hired an external consultant who is going to be really guiding our effort in looking at developing a master plan for this park. It's very, very exciting for us. We actually don't have master plans in our state park system. And so we also view this as potentially a model that we might be able to apply to other parks in just kind of its comprehensiveness of looking at the varying factors, the growing visitation, and really the various opportunities that a park like Missouri Headwaters can offer. It is designated as a National Historic Landmark, and so there are certainly some considerations there that are important for us to think about as we think of, you know, just kind of thinking about the future development and just kind of how this park can continue to serve the growing visitation and other kinds of interests locally. I know that, you know, in the Three Forks area, we are seeing a lot of just really entrepreneurial efforts that Missouri Headwaters also kind of touches. And so I think that's very exciting. And so Missouri Headwaters was one that we didn't have a management plan for up until now. We did have an interpretive plan. So that is a little bit of a guide. And so we are working very closely now with those consultants who already have dug in and started to draft a timeline and kind of help us think about some key considerations for that part. I'll now move on to the Smith River. And again, we have a management plan for the Smith, just as we have for others. It's dated back to 2009. And again, I think that this is one that really has so many valuable resources for us to kind of think about. It's really a great plan, but we also know that, you know, we need to kind of adjust some of our planning efforts and things like that to kind of what we are seeing in recent years. As many of you know, there is a lot of interest in floating the Smith. I believe that this past year we had over 15,000 applications. Last year we had over 10, and we thought that was kind of record setting. And so the interest continues to grow. I might just also mention that, as you know, this is a permitted park, and that we do kind of have a cap on the number of floats and things in any given year. But when we talk about growth, we talk both about it in terms of just the growing interest. We also, you know, kind of look at what are the kind of average group sizes across kind of recent years, and those are increasingly getting bigger. And then we do have a process, as some of you know, to fill cancellation permits, and those have increasingly been tapped into. And so we just recognize it's time to look at a number of things here. I know that in your board materials, we mentioned a few things like looking at just kind of the use of Camp Baker, looking at the boat camps and kind of that array, looking at our waste management system for the Smith, and considering, you know, just some changes that we might be able to make there And so, there's a number of issues. We're really, for the Smith, I would just say, just starting to look at the kind of constellation of management issues. Also knowing that we can't tackle everything. The plan itself is very long, and we'll really try to hone in on some of the priority issues that both we've identified, but also through feedback from others have given us that we will also try to focus on. Some of the immediate steps for the Smith include looking at kind of our advisory council, or what was our advisory council, and reconstituting that, and really using that body of people to kind of help guide and really act as a sounding board to help us, kind of make sure that we are taking into kind of the full array of perspectives. I know there are a lot of views on the Smith, and it's really just kind of an exciting process, I think, because we know that there are some recreational opportunities here for us to address. The other thing I would mention with the Smith is that it is just like a lot of our parks, one that features a vast array of very important cultural and historic resources. And so that too will play into a lot of the management decisions and operations that we're going to be reviewing. We're really at a place now of just kind of looking across the board. What data do we have? What are some of the informational gaps that we might look to fill? And so just want to say, just as kind of with some of these other planning efforts, we are kind of just getting started, kind of assembling our team, and really just excited about kind of the opportunity now that we can put towards these parks. So I'm just going to wrap up here. This is a beautiful view of Medicine Rocks, to offer the opportunity up both for questions. And then again, I know that we've got a number of my colleagues across the state who are very, very involved in a number of these planning efforts. And so also really am open to kind of allowing them also to maybe share anything that I might not have captured. So I'll just pause there, Chair Kip, and just let you help to facilitate any questions that there might be or other discussion.
Okay, thank you for that report. Does any of the board members have questions for Ken and the 2021-22 planning programs? Member Brown?
Yes, so thank you for that. It was very informative, and a couple of questions on the Smith River. One, it seems like Camp Baker in the past has worked well for people camping there prior to launching. And so there's talk about maybe closing that. So that's a question. Two, there was a note there about getting a new member for that ad hoc committee that maybe is a business person from White Sulphur Springs. And a lot of you know Sarah Calhoun from Red Ants Pants, but she would be very good at that. And if she had the time to do it. And then finally, I would like to be, or I would be interested in doing that. So I might get a hold of Member Mo. I know is involved in that, but I would, I have a love for the Smith River.
Sure, thank you, Member Brown. I don't think you're alone in your love for the Smith. One might even offer that it's getting a little loved to death. And so I think this is exactly why we are looking at some of these issues. And again, I just want to highlight that we are just kind of getting started. You are correct in your first comment in terms of just kind of thinking about the use of Camp Baker. As maybe some of you know, this past season, especially with concerns of COVID-19 and the ability, or really the inability, to provide that social distancing and things like that, we did really just use that as kind of a launch site, and it really, I think, worked well. I know that I'm going to turn it over to our Region 4 colleagues who can speak more explicitly to that. but that is something that we are looking at. But again, I would just also highlight that we're looking at, the numerous boat camps and just really kind of the use and the movement through this important corridor, and then its impacts overall. So Camp Baker is certainly just kind of one point along a 59-mile river corridor that we're considering. And then, yes, thank you for your suggestion, Member Brown, of Ms. Calhoun. We are, again, kind of looking at both the existing array of advisory council members, but also kind of the diversity of perspectives that we know that we want to bring into this planning effort as we think about the multidisciplinary kind of considerations that a park like the Smith offers. Something that's really, I think, compelling. I came from kind of the economic research world before this, is that state parks has a role, just as FWP does, in terms of helping to promote economic development. And kind of, I think about that a lot in terms of the Smith. And in fact, we've considered trying to maybe do some sort of economic impact study that would help us articulate a little more clearly some of the Smith in particular kind of impacts. So in any case, your point is well taken. I just want to, just in the interest of time, maybe turn it over. I know we have some colleagues from Region 4 who maybe also would like to add something to what I've shared regarding what you've asked and proposed here. So I don't know, John or Cullen, please feel free to jump in.
John, you're muted.
I'm mute.
Still muted. Yeah, we're not hearing you.
John, this is Colin in the regional office. I can jump in if you'd like. Yeah, Member Brown and other members of the board, Director Warshek, this is Colin Moss in Region 4. You had mentioned the fact, and Cayenne touched on it, that Camp Baker was a day use site last year, and it is again this year. And what prompted that was COVID-19. And as you know, Member Brown, Camp Baker is not a really big site. It's only about a 6 or 7 acre site. So we've got a really small footprint there. And as time has gone on, and Cayenne had alluded to this earlier, we have caps on the number of groups and the number of people per group. But what has happened over the years is that the average group size has grown. And when the average group size has grown, so has, not only the number of people, but the number of vehicles. And Chair Kip had mentioned the parking problems at Bannock. Well, you can imagine what it's starting to look like at Camp Baker. We're literally running out of parking areas, to the point where we had to open up an additional parking area behind our pole barn garage. And so we're starting to experience a lot of resource impacts just based on the number of vehicles down there. Camp Baker was never really designed for accommodating the number of people that we have, that we're seeing now, versus even just 10 or 12 years ago. And so when we converted it to a day use to accommodate social distancing, because it is such a small site, it actually worked really well. And we got a lot of good comments from the general public, from our commercial outfitters, and the community of White Sulphur Springs, including the county commissioners, on an increased business in town. It really made things flow really well at Camp Baker. So because of that, it kind of opened our eyes. It forced us to kind of look and say, wow, this actually worked really well. So that's why we're going to be looking at possibly, extending that into the future.
Okay, I have a question for Colin there. Is there other public camping near Camp Baker?
There is, and that's one of the potential issues. So what happened last year is, some of the locals, if they were from, Bozeman or Helena or even Great Falls, some of those groups would drive directly from their homes early in the morning. And then some other folks would stay in one of the motels in White Sulphur Springs. And then other groups would camp either at Newland Creek Reservoir or what used to be called the Smith River Fishing Access Site. That's just up the road about 10 miles from Camp Baker. But obviously when we discontinued camping at Camp Baker, then we are displacing those folks. And so they have to find other accommodations elsewhere.
Okay. And then I have a question for Kyan. I understand that we love the Smith to death. And you mentioned that there was a cap per year on use. And the flows and the weather would help determine the use period. But is there a cap per year or is it a cap per day on launches?
Great. So I might also turn this over to Colin to just provide you some more specifics, but our parameter has been 9 floats per day, with the exception of Wednesdays and Sundays. There are 2 less on those days. As you are well aware, we also have 8 outfitters, which are given 73 permits. And so they also are able to take groups down. And so, really kind of what this opportunity is for us is to look at the constellation of floater opportunities that exist. You may also be aware of the guidance that we have used to try to enable folks who have maybe not floated the Smith to give them that opportunity. That works most of the time, but of course, it is up to the group leader to determine who they want to maybe bring along with them. So it's actually kind of an interesting statistical model that we'll probably kind of get into a little bit more as we move forward. But yes, we're looking at all of these things in terms of kind of floater opportunities. I might also mention that, our shoulder season use in April has been growing over recent years. And so even just this past month, I believe we had our 3rd highest season ever. And of course, a lot of that is very weather dependent. When you go in April, I think know that you might need your snow pants. And so, a lot of this, there's a lot of moving parts, I guess, maybe is the best way to put it. But we are trying to think about just kind of the equity of floating opportunities for the Smith, since we know that demand is so high. So I'll stop there. And I don't know if Colin or John, if you've unmuted yourself, if you'd also like to jump in with some more specifics.
You guys hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. Chairman Kip, members of the board, Director Warsack, John Taylor, Region 4 Park Manager. It's nice to be with you all today. I haven't met some of you yet, so it's really nice to at least see you on a Zoom meeting. We don't actually have a cap on floaters for the year, Chairman Kip, but we do cap the number of permits that we allow out in the peak season. So that is a big limiting factor due to the flows that really diminish, usually starting in mid-July. And so there really isn't a cap per year. People can float the Smith any time of year, but really conditions limit that very much. So, but we have seen really increased use in the shoulder season, especially in the spring, due to the fact that flows we seem to be losing earlier, and the weather seems to be warming up more in the springtime. So that's happening to a large degree and really affecting the resource as well. But as Cayenne said, we allow 9 floats per day, 15 people per float during the whole year. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Mo, you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. John, what is the balance between out-of-state versus in-state permits?
I believe, Member Mo, it's in the vicinity of about 70%, 30% resident to non-resident. Colin can correct me, but I think that's in the ballpark.
70 being
Resident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the concern that I hear the most often and it's somewhat tied into the day use of Camp Baker is that Montanans don't want to be priced out of the Smith. And although it is an economic boon for White Sulphur Springs to be able to take that spillover, it also makes it more expensive for the floater who finally gets that draw. So that's one of the balances that I hope we'll be cognizant of. Having spent the latter part of my career with the Montana University system, I became keenly aware of how out-of-state tuition really was what was making our university system affordable for Montanans. And so you can get kind of skewed as you try to balance that. With each one of these on kind of a different tack, with each one of these plans, what I would like to see, particularly the one that strikes me as having the most work done already in that area, is that when we form these advisory councils, that an American Indian presence is on them. One of the things that I have talked about and that I was so impressed with one of the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks personnel whose last name escapes me, or first name is Rachel, is that we have an incredible resource there in terms of the cultural history of each one of our parks and how much richer the experience would be if we were giving that entire portrait, not only geological, but also historical in terms of the American Indian presences there. And so I would really urge that to be a consideration in the establishment of these advisory councils. And I know that you're in the opening stages, but in each one of them, but particularly I think in the case of the Smith, the issue of human waste is a crucial one. And so keeping care for in preserving the environment that is there is going to be very important.
Member Mo, Chairman Kipp, absolutely. Those will all be taken into serious consideration. Waste pack out will be looked at. That's certainly one of the priorities that we've designated to look at, and in conjunction with preserving the resource and the cultural resources as well. So for sure, we will take that into consideration for sure.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the board to our presenter or the staff?
Chairman Kipp?
Yes, Member Loomis.
Thank you. Yeah, Kyan, thank you for the presentation today. That's great that you could bring that information to us. One question I had was on the Missouri Headwaters State Park and the decision to look at an external consulting group to help out with planning for that facility. I was curious, is that common to look to an external group to help us with these decisions? I'm kind of curious how that decision was made to look for outside help, and what kind of things, as a Parks Department looking for, what kind of answers are we looking for from this group? I know it's nice to have a fresh set of eyes on projects and stuff. So maybe if you could expand on that and how this decision came to be.
Sure. Thank you, Member Loomis, for your question. Maybe what I also could have started out with when I introduced myself is saying that I am the planning program in the state park system. And so, not only do I collaborate very often with my colleagues within the agency, but it just really isn't feasible with the limited resources that we have to be able to really put full force into these management plan efforts just ourselves. And so it is quite common, actually, that a park system would look to outside voices and expertise to bring in kind of planning, both measures, and then also in this case, what we've asked this contractor to do is really to develop this draft master plan kind of for our review. And so, one of the benefits I would say is that often, as you can imagine, these consultants will have very specific expertise in particular areas that maybe we don't have and that we can leverage. And so Missouri Headwaters is again one park that of others that we just didn't have a plan for. So it's really nice to have somebody not just due to their fresh set of eyes, but really kind of comprehensively look at the myriad challenges and kind of opportunities that we have there, looking at both kind of the emergent issues, but also the ones that we see 5-10 years down the road, and really helping us think through that. And so what they are doing is drafting a document for us, for then us to review. We do have an advisory group for that effort as well. Member Mo, to your comment, we have definitely been very proactive in trying to engage various tribal entities and have worked closely with Quinn Kuhn, at the FWP's kind of tribal liaison. And so in a number of our planning efforts, we are working closely with her to make sure both she's kind of appraised of kind of what we're doing, but then also can help us connect dots and kind of think of those intersections that maybe intuitively we did not. So in any case, yes, it is fairly common, Member Loomis. And I would suspect that, again, as we continue to develop kind of a timeline and prioritize the next iteration of plans that we would look at in future years, we may also look to kind of external help as well, either for small portions of that or, maybe kind of in kind of a fuller package. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions from the board members? All right, thank you, Karen. Since the item is informational only, we won't need to have any public comment. Next, we'll move on to the action items. Classification and investment strategy policies extension. Beth Shoemate, Fish, Wildlife and Parks Administrator, will present the next item. Again, the classification investment strategy policy extension. Okay, Beth.
Yeah. Good morning again, Chair Kip, members of the board, Director Warsack. I am here just to present the extension for the classification and investment strategy policy. We have had different iterations of a classification policy dating back to 2015 that was board approved. And so I just want to provide a little bit of background, especially for some of the new board members that might be somewhat new to just classification in general and the purpose of it. And so this really is to help make it easier for visitors to distinguish between that wide array of options that our system offers. We have developed where we are basically classifying our parks into groupings for the 55 state parks that we manage. So classification is what guides the level of service that each park provides. And it also allows for us to better communicate that type of experience that a park visitor might expect at each one of those parks. So the visitors' experiences, we very much recognize that several of our parks offer multiple kinds of experiences. And so we have organized our parks into 3 different visitor experience categories: natural, heritage, and recreation. And these are based upon each park's predominant assets as well as historical precedents. Then we've also grouped our parks into service levels. So each park is designated by a service level description that we call rustic, core, or enhanced, which is aimed at helping visitors more clearly anticipate what kind of amenities that they might expect at each one of those particular parks. The investment strategy portion is really an approach to guide the idea of the experience as well as those service class groupings. And it really is the vision of what we anticipate the state park system, what it should look like when it's actually built out. So in other words, what is the gap between the current condition of our system and the future, the desired condition, and how much is needed to actually fill that gap? So service level designations are the snapshot of our current condition of our parks today, but we very much wanted to build in fluidity, and it's imperative to allow for adjustments between those service levels as conditions change. Fort Owen is probably one of the best examples I can point to, especially since I mentioned that update earlier, where we have been able to secure outside funds on behalf of one of our key partners in order to enhance that park, improving the visitor services as well as the overall experience at Fort Owen. So this system acknowledges that not all parks are, will be, or should be at a high level of development. However, it also allows for the parks to move within the same grouping, which can also be shared. So what have we done since this was approved in 2019? We have set out on a course towards a multi-year phased implementation effort that really put in place the framework for some key management objectives and practices. So we first established that classification system criteria. We gathered all of the various park staff and sat around a room for a couple days and really worked through what those different types of services that are provided at each one of those types of parks and the types of experiences. Then we've also been working really hard on developing foundation documents for all of the parks, which Cayenne just provided that update to you. I am happy to report that we have a foundation document in existence for every one of our state parks to date. This is quite the effort. This is sort of the cover sheet that I'm sharing here of a foundation document for Lone Pine State Park, which I'll be presenting on an agenda item on later. But this foundation document really helps provide a format for ensuring some consistency across the state park system. And it documents and describes each park's unique qualities. It also helps focus our efforts on protecting the most important resources and values of the park. So we actually now have identified, why is this park even in existence in our state park system? What is the purpose for its being in as a state park? And so now we can clearly point to what is the origination of those different parks. It also provides a means of communicating what is most important about each one of these parks to our stakeholders. Again, Fort Owen being a really good example, we have a very engaged Fort Owen Friends group that has been able to secure outside grant funding sources and in order to enhance that particular park. It also, these foundation documents establish a baseline for the development and amendment of any subsequent park plans. So you just saw now where Cayenne has provided updates on 3 particular park units that now will be looking at a master plan as well as management plans for the Flathead, Smith River, as well as Missouri Headwaters. So just a great example of these foundation document plans identify what is the next plan that needs to be developed for that particular park. So that's the foundation documents. And I know that we have been, I believe I provided a specific example of one of those at the December board meeting too. So just really excited, and it definitely took a team effort, cross-divisional once again, in order to produce these foundation documents. And this is very typical of what other state park systems as well as the national park system have in their existence. And it's just a nice document that we can then share with all of those stakeholders or any of those visitors that are coming to those parks. So we also knew that we needed to take stock of what do we actually have in our state park system. We knew that we needed to inventory and actually assess all of our assets and infrastructure. And so I'm also happy to report that we have accomplished that effort. We have geolocated almost 5,000 assets of infrastructure data points within our state parks. And so we can now point to this inventory and actually be able to know what that inventory is and what those assets are, how much of it we have. And we've also been able to really take an inventory of all of those critical operation documents and put those into a repository for every single one of those assets and core pieces of infrastructure. So we can now have an enhanced opportunity, especially as we have staff turnover. So the new staff coming in will understand how to take care of those particular assets. This is something that we did not have in place prior to this classification policy. And it's again taken a whole lot of staff members across the state to really develop this critical operations repository. So at this time, those are kind of the most important implementation efforts that we have to date. We also, I'll just mention really quick that we are working on an improved graphics design effort as well. Chair Kip, you mentioned the sign at Bannock. We have really tried to take we're just in the starting stages of taking a look at all of the different signs that we have across our state park system. There are many. We have directional signage, regulatory signage, interpretive signage, exhibit halls. So we do have a much improved inventory of that, but we're still at really the beginning stage of that process. And so that's another area that we really hope to enhance, because we know and understand that signage is so important, especially for that visitor experience. Just like you mentioned, how do you know that you actually turn right here at this point on the highway in order to get to Bannock? So we are working towards that as well. So then, of course, we will be developing in phase 2 is when we really start to double down on these different tools that we have already developed, as well as those strategies in order to improve the resource allocation process, where we can then start to identify those prioritized projects that we now know we need to address. And so you'll actually be seeing some of that in the capital program update, where we have a very large major maintenance package brought before you in consideration for approval in order to solve some of those major maintenance projects and issues across the state park system. And we very much went through and vetted each one of those projects through a prioritized selection process with our regional park managers across the state. So if there aren't any questions at this point, there are no changes to the existing policy. This merely is just an extension request for the policy as it exists to date. And we will try to do our best to provide those implementation effort updates to the board over the course of the next 2 years.
Beth,
So,
may I? Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Beth, for that presentation. Does the board members have any questions for Beth?
This is Kathy, Member McLean. I just have a comment. I was very impressed with this strategy policy, this investment policy and the classifications. It was good to see it. I like Appendix A where you can see the visual. That was good. And I was interested in learning about the assets documentation. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board? Member Mo?
Let's see. Yeah, I would just comment that a lot of time went into the creation of this. I think that it was, in terms of the previous board's work, I think Member Brown would agree, we spent probably more time on this than on any other. And there was some concern prior to our taking this project on, that the classification was a way of ranking the parks in terms of their value. And of course, that was not well received by many of those friends of a particular park. And so I think this does a good job of clarifying to the public what each one of those things is and is designed to be, and allows us to make investments in them that are sensible given the original purpose of that park and the potential as it grows. So I think it's good work, and it's in such an infant stage that it would be good to extend it.
Okay, any other questions? Member Brown?
Yeah, so just to add to that, we also felt like, from a visitor standpoint, to be able to go to a website and look at a checklist of, is there camping, is there water, those sorts of amenities, that it would make it easier for the public to go, okay, I want to go to this park. But again, good work, Beth, on that.
Yeah, thank you. And Chair Kip and Board Member Brown, if I might just add that with our improved website that we just were able to get finalized just in the last few weeks, actually, the Fish, Wildlife and Parks website project, we now have a much improved opportunity for those visitors to be able to get online, get onto the website, and be able to select a park by location and by that type of amenity that they're maybe looking for. So say they want to go hiking, where are the trails that they can access within those parks? And so it's sort of that experience-based user guide that we have very much improved in light of that website project. So it's also another improvement in the last couple of years.
Beth, for the record, could you give us that website address for the public?
Sure, fwp.mt.gov.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Hank, I see your hands up.
Yes, Chairman Kip. I just really appreciate the work that's done on this as a new director. It goes right in line with customer service and what our goal is going to be from my perspective. Is how do we take care of the public? How do we make things easier? And with our expansion with parks, we want to make sure we're be ahead of the game as much as we possibly can. So I really appreciate everything that was done on this, and it's very impressive from my perspective. So I just want to lay that out there. So thank you.
Okay. If we don't have any other questions, would someone like to make a motion on Beth's presentation?
I will.
Member Brown?
So I move the Parks and Recreation Board approve the 2-year extension of the classification and investment strategy policy.
Okay, we have a motion. Would someone like to second that?
I would second that. This is Member Kath McLean.
Okay, Member McLean seconds that motion. Thanks for that motion. Now we would take public comment on the motion. Katie, do you have anyone in the queue?
Yes, Chair Kip, members of the board. I'm on here today helping out with public comment again. We do have quite a few people dialed in. It looks like we got about 15 members of the public dialed in. So I just put out the reminder to those that are dialed in that if you'd like to comment, it's *9. That will raise your hand. I will unmute you one at a time and you'll get a notification when you're unmuted. Please state your name for us, where you're from, and if you represent an organization. Please keep your comment on topic to the current agenda item in motion. And please be cognizant of others' time. Chair Kip, I'd look to you to see if you actually want to keep a time limit today. Looks like we have about 15 people dialed in. So
15 is a fair amount. How about a couple minutes on comments? Does the board agree with that? Okay. Thanks, Katie.
Yep, sounds good. As of right now, I am seeing no hands raised, but I'll just give it maybe a minute here. Again, *9 if you'd like to comment. Chair Kip, members of the board, I'm seeing none.
Okay, since there's no questions, let's vote on the motion. The motion is to approve. Let me get back here, excuse me. The motion is to move the Parks and Recreation Board approve the 2-year extension of the classification investment policy strategy. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes with a 5-0 vote. Thanks, Beth, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Chair Kip, can I just ask one thing? This is Colleen. Who motioned and who seconded the?
Okay, the motion was made by Member Brown, and the second was Member McLean.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item, Ken Soderberg, State Parks Chief of Operations, will present the next agenda item, the Chief Plenacoo State Parks Agricultural Lease. Ken, are you there?
Yeah, Chair Kip, I'm going to just do a quick introduction for Ken Soderberg here, Chief of Operations, and we also have Region 5 staff out of the Billings office. I see Terry Walters, our Regional Park Manager, and she might, I believe, also have Aaron Kind, the Park Manager for Chief Plenacoo State Park, at the ready for any questions. So I'll step away and allow Ken to make his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Kip, members of the board, Director Wasatch, Ken Soderberg, Bureau Chief for the Operations Bureau. Chief Plenacoo State Park is located in Pryor, just south of Billings within the Crow Reservation. The state has maintained an ag lease with an adjacent farm ranch operation for the last 10 years that has since expired. The proposal today is to enter into a new lease agreement for another 10 years with another family member of that same farm ranch operation. The lease will allow planting and grazing on 54 acres of state park land and haying on another 40 acres of state park land at Chief Plenacoo. The rental costs for the 54 acres of farmland will be $756 each year, and the hay harvested on the 40 acres will be assessed at $20 per ton. The primary benefit to the park from this lease agreement is that it helps reduce weeds, and it also helps to reduce fire fuel buildup at this National Historic Landmark. Additionally, weed control is written into the lease agreement and allows for up to $378 of the annual rental fee to be used for that purpose. An environmental assessment was completed for this project. No public comments were received during the 30-day public comment period, and the department seeks approval to enter into this 10-year lease agreement. Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Does any of the board members have questions for Ken regarding his presentation? It was a great presentation, no questions. If there are no questions, would someone like to make a motion on the presentation?
Your Honor, or
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. I got my meetings mixed up. I move that the Parks and Recreation Board approve the above proposal allowing Fish, Wildlife and Parks to enter into a 10-year lease to plant and farm crops on approximately 60 acres, to cut hay on approximately 40 acres, and authorize a grazing of the farmland.
Okay, Member Mo made that motion. Would another member like to second that?
I would second that. This is Kathy McLean.
Okay, member McLean seconds that motion. Thanks for the motion. Do we have, Katie, do we have anyone that wants to comment on this?
Chair Kip, members of the board, I'm seeing none right now, but again, I'd put out the reminder that for those that would like to comment, it's *9.
Chair Kip?
Member Brown?
Yeah, just a quick comment. After reading through that, it sounds like Chief Plentycoo would be happy with our decision. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Thank you.
Chair Kip, members of the board, I'm seeing none.
Okay, since we have nobody that wants to comment from the public, let's vote on that motion. Again, the motion was moved to the Parks and Recreation Board approve the above proposed proposal allowing Fish, Wildlife and Parks to enter into a 10-year lease to plant and farm crops on the approximate 60 acres and to cut hay on approximate 40 acres and authorize a grazing of the farmland. That was moved by member Mo, is that correct? Yes. And then seconded by member McLean. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda, Tom Riley, Parks Assistant Administrator, will present the next agenda item, Parks Capital Program.
Chair Kip, can you guys all see me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Chair Kip, board members, Director Warsech, Beth, my name is Tom Riley, Assistant Administrator of Montana State Parks. And the agenda item before you is the proposed Montana State Parks Capital Program for the upcoming biennium. And there's projects listed as well as the associated funding for each. And we have a big program this biennium. It's a mix of maintenance of existing facilities and rehab of existing sites, as well as some new amenities and featured in some state parks. Some background on the approval here of the board, because we have several new members here. But when the Parks and Recreation Board was created in the 2013 legislative session, there was a provision at 23-1-111 MCA where the Parks Board would approve proposed capital expenditures of the department on park sites. And originally it was for $5,000 or more. And then in a subsequent legislative session, it was changed to $50,000, which is much more manageable. So on your cover sheet today, you're going to see 11 line items in your materials. And these are the proposed projects for the upcoming biennium that we're advancing today. They vary in size from the largest and probably the most familiar and important one for us is our statewide major maintenance program at $2.5 million. And the smallest one is a proposed project for the summer site at $100,000 as a temporary work this summer to get the site open. So attached to the cover sheet are 3 sheets that depict these 11 projects in more detail. And these, once we get through our process here internally and with the new fiscal year starting July 1st, these will be transferred to our design and construction group here within FWP for implementation. And virtually all of these, in fact, all of them will involve private contractors. Some of them involve hiring consultants, engineering consultants, because they're over $75,000, and they'll all be completed by private contractors. And with your permission, Chair Kip, I guess I'd just like to go through the 11 projects and maybe go through them in more detail briefly, and then folks can ask questions if there are any. But I'll leave that to your pleasure, Chair Kip.
Yeah, I would appreciate that. Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. The first project is our parks major maintenance. Again, $2.5 million. The criteria on this, when we work with our regional folks on putting projects together, it has to be maintenance. It can't be new stuff. It can't be new features. It has to be maintenance to our existing facilities. And you'll see there in the funding sources, a term we commonly use is bed tax. It's actually the accommodation tax. The department receives a portion of that each year, and it's earmarked specifically for maintenance. We can't legally use it on anything but maintenance, and that's re-roofing, water systems, septic systems, things of that type. Further in the attachments here, you'll see a list here of about 65 projects that are going to be implemented over the biennium. And in previous years, what we've done here is we've allocated basically half the money at the start of the biennium, the other half midway through. This year we did it different. We've allocated virtually most all of it at the start of the biennium, so we have the best chance of getting these done during the biennium. And they vary from hazard tree removal, picnic tables. We have a signage package in each region, asphalt maintenance, striping, things of that type. The next project is at Yellow Bay State Park, and that's a $1.2 million project to rehab the site. And the big issue we have there is the entrance. And if some of you have been there, we have an entrance that was probably installed in the 1930s. And it's steep, it's hard to turn south, there's a sight distance problem. And Yellow Bay is the last of the 5 state parks on Flathead Lake to receive a facelift. And it's a small site, but it's a very important site. It's on the east shore of Flathead Lake and has a nice boat ramp and dock. And there's some tent camping and a lot of day use. So that is going to be an important project on Flathead Lake. The third one is the Lewis and Clark Caverns septic system replacement at the campground. And at the Lewis and Clark Caverns, we have a comfort station and a nice campground, RV dump, group use pavilion. And this septic system was installed in the 1970s. And I don't have the exact date, but it's at the end of its useful life. Regulations have changed. The systems are a lot more complicated now, but about 2 years ago, we replaced virtually the same septic system on top up at where we conduct the cave tours. And we have a comfort station there, and we have a private concessionaire that works out of the concession building. And we redid the septic system that was at the end of its useful life there. And this is the same project in the lower area. And the thing I want to add here for everyone, just as an aside, is this septic system has been sized with a future comfort station replacement in mind. The comfort station we have there is from the mid to early 70s. It just really needs a replacement at some point in the future. It's a lot of wood in it, and it's hard to maintain, it's hard to paint. The ADA stuff isn't what it should be. So we've planned ahead for a future project to replace that comfort station. That's a very popular state park. And it's our oldest state park in the system too, 1939. The fourth project on here is for the Smith River, and this is for Eden Bridge site improvements. And that's the takeout for the Smith River float. That's $600,000. And that is for possibly the future implementation of a waste pack out system on the river once the planning process is complete and through. But that would be the logical place for what is termed a scat machine or a disposal system for floaters leaving the river. So that is a standalone project there. The next one is some new work in state parks, and we've titled this Parks Diversified Lodging. And this would be for cabin type structures and tent platforms to be placed in probably 5 state parks around the state. And we're looking at 2 cabins per site. They would not have inside plumbing or water or any of those extra costs. They would go in areas where we would rent them, and there would be an alternative lodging opportunity for people to rent and reserve who didn't have a motorhome or an RV or would choose not to tent camp. Many states have this around the country. We have 2 cabins at Lewis Clark Caverns that we rent that are very popular. We have 3 yurts at Big Arm State Park that are popular. So this is somewhat of an extension of some diversified lodging we already have in place in the park system. The next one is parks interpretive and exhibit upgrades. And we've listed some sites there, some possible upgrades. And one of the things I've noticed over the years here is we do these nice interpretive projects, and then we often don't go back and upgrade them or refresh them because of all the maintenance needs we have. And this is a conscious effort to put some funding into upgrading some of these interpretive displays that may be getting a bit old, maybe out of date in some cases. And we've listed 4 or 5 possible projects there, but we're going to have a refined list of work at these sites or other sites. We've have $500,000 for that effort. And again, these typically involve hiring consultants, creative folks, working with fabricators to do new signs and panels. The next one is Fort Owen State Park. In Fort Owen, this is only private authority for the foundation grant, $390,000. What this will allow us to do is conduct the work and have authority to expend these private funds on state park site or state-owned site. And the work includes the parking area development, fencing, signing, road upgrades, and the big thing is interpretive upgrades at Fort Owen State Park. But again, this is authority, legislative authority to expend the private funds that were secured by the Parks Foundation. The next one is Milltown State Park, just east of Missoula. And this project involves improving the public access to a parcel, a 30-acre parcel that was donated to the department about 1.5 years, 2 years ago by a private landowner, private group. The work of the project involves a fall protection structure under the railroad so people can walk. And it also involves fencing to secure the site or secure the route so people don't get up on the interstate or the railroad tracks. And these are all conditions that we have to satisfy when we work with the railroad. This is very familiar to us because we did the same thing when we developed the Milltown site as far as getting public access in and out. This project involves $125,000 that was donated to us or provided to us with the land donation. And then we're matching it with $125,000 of our Parks earned revenue for a total project of about $250,000. But this will provide public access into the 30-acre parcel, which is contiguous with Milltown State Park. The next project is, again, the Smith River, and this is a $200,000 amount that we have. And again, we have to complete the management plan, but this funding could be used for work at Camp Baker. It could be used for improvements at the boat camps on the river, hazard tree removal, or it could be used for work at Eden Bridge, should we proceed with a project there. But this is somewhat a placeholder right now, excuse me, until we get the management plan completed. The next one is the Flathead Lake Islands, which Kyan spoke about earlier. This is a $200,000 line item. These islands, there's 3 islands there. Cedar Island is 23 acres, Bird Island is 30 acres, and then the O'Neill Islands are very small. But these sites are getting a great deal of camping use. When the planning effort is complete on this, the most likely use of some of this fund would be to address the sanitation issues, possibly composting latrines. We have one of those on Wild Horse Island now that we've had for many, many years. So there are some provisions there. It could be used for signage. It could be used for designated camping areas. But this will be used on these islands to address the increasing public use. The last one on the list here is one we spoke about a bit earlier. This is proposed $100,000 that we utilize now, up to $100,000 to address the temporary parking, maybe latrines, maybe fencing, to have the site open to the public this year while we go through the larger public involvement process of what the permanent development is going to be for the summer site. As Beth mentioned earlier, we have the paperwork into the grant application into the National Park Service for the LWCF funding. And once that is complete and approved, we'll be in a position to develop a temporary, to address the public needs in a short term at the summer site. But again, we have a much bigger project to complete there, but that has to go through the full public involvement process and the EA, and that's going to take some time. So those are the 11 projects in more detail. And then I also attached the proposed major maintenance projects, and there's about 65 of them there. And what I did here, I just want to comment that I listed all the projects. I didn't list just the ones over 50,000. I just want to give you a complete picture of the type of things we do statewide with major maintenance. And it's listed by region. And you're going to see a wide diversity of, grade and gravel, resealing concrete or resealing asphalt, roofing, air conditioning replacements, irrigation systems, docks, garbage cans, and picnic tables. That's the bread and butter things of what our folks deal with statewide. So with that, Chair Kip, I would be available to answer any questions folks may have.
Okay, Tom, thank you for that presentation. Does any of the board members have questions for Mr. Riley? Member Mo?
Tom, do these figures take into account the high construction costs?
Chairman Kip, Member Mo, yes and no. We did our best on this working with DNC, but you're going to see at the end of the major maintenance list, we've allocated 2.1 million of the 2.5, knowing some of these are going to be wrong. Yeah. And we're dealing with this on bids now across the agency. So no, there is some funding left over just for that exact issue. And frankly, some of these estimates are going to be wrong anyway, just as time goes by. And depending how many bidders we get and how busy people are, it's not nailed down that tight. But yes, that is an issue, Member Mo.
And follow up, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
The number for Summers Beach seems low. I would think that latrines would be priority, and seems like that would chew up a lot of that money.
Chair Kip, Member Mo, for the preliminary stuff, we're looking at putting porta potties in rather than putting down a permanent $20,000 latrine that may not be in the right place or the right elevation and would have to be moved.
Yeah, I
And
just
we're-
remember that being quite a complaint
Yes.
about the past usage of Summers Beach.
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
Are there any other questions? Member Brown? Oh, you're muted.
There.
There you go.
Yep. So Tom, thank you for not only the good presentation, but the good job in planning. And I was just going to mention, talking about Chief Plentycoo, there's a collaborative project between Billings West High, and they call it what the construction trades and building classes. And they are in the process of building a new cabin for the staff at Chief Plentycoo. I believe, is it a trailer that they have there now, a mobile home that the staff live in?
Yes, Chair Kip, Member Brown, we do have basically a small RV trailer that our AmeriCorps member assigned to Chief Plentycoo State Park lives in. And this small cabin or small house that Billings High School is building for us will replace that little RV thing and be placed on the same pad. The sewer is there, the water is there. It'll be connected right there for a much more permanent installation, and it's going to look better because all that is visible from the museum and the parking lot.
So I was just going to say, if we could help do more of those kinds of projects, I believe it's being partially funded through the Montana State Parks Foundation. Is that right, Tom?
Chair Kip, Member Brown, that is correct, yes.
Yeah.
And I will add that we work through the permitting process with the Department of Labor and Industry here. So the Billings High School is set up, once they're permitted for this one, they could build more. And there's a term I'm not gonna get right here, but it's like if someone is set up to build the same kind of temporary home or the same kind of trailer kind of thing, once they're permitted for all of them, as long as they don't change the design or size. So they have kind of a blanket approval once they have approval. And that's what our design and construction folks worked with building codes. They're very helpful in getting that kind of blanket approval. So if the Billings High School wanted to build more of these for us or for someone else, that hurdle is passed.
It's such a win-win and such a cool project. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, Chair Kip, if I might add a quick comment in response to Board Member Brown's inquiry. Thank you. I just want to give a little bit more background and context to that Chief Plentycoo tiny house is what it's really considered. And the high school actually approached us and one of our maintenance supervisors, Jessica, out of the Billings office. And it was just one of those great ideas. And it really is the perfect model for workforce development. It very much is a win-win. We hope that this is a model that we can replicate across the state with various high schools or colleges that are in those types of programs where they are learning the building trade while also benefiting the state parks and the visitors. And it really will allow for some on-site presence to be there throughout the course of the year. So we are hoping that this is sort of the beginning of workforce development, some of these unique strategic partnerships that we have, and hopefully can replicate this model. It's definitely not brand new to state parks across the country. We're seeing a lot more of these little tiny houses, tiny cabins, whether it's for staffing needs or visitors. But as we look at the housing market in the state of Montana right now, the ability for us to be able to provide some staff housing is even more important than ever. So I appreciate your comments there. And like I said, we also have the Region 5 staff in case they wanted to say anything more. I see Terry there, but yeah, it's a great project.
Are there any other questions from the board members? Member Loomis?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Kip. Tom, thanks for putting this together and the detailed information. It really helps me kind of see all of the different projects that are out there and all the needs for maintenance and et cetera. My question is, do the funds have to be expended, that's the right term, during the next biennium, and when do the projects need to be completed?
Chair Kip, Member Loomis, since this is a capital program, they don't have to be expended within the biennium. They carry on until they're expended, or a term called reverted, where we turn them back and they go back into the account they came from. I refer to it as the savings account. They go back where they came from. But we do try to get our projects done as fast as we can, because the old money left on the books is one of the things the legislature always looks at, to be sure that you're asking for what you need and you're expending it in a timely manner and getting it out for public benefit. So it's a conscious effort we take seriously, but no, they don't have to be expended within the fiscal year or the biennium, because often these capital projects, they just take a long time with the public comment period, the winter season, the short construction season, and it's just not feasible to have them all done.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a question for Tom. The funding looks like it comes from lots of different areas: bed tax, motor boat fuel tax, parks earned revenue, general license, private funds, Smith Corridor enhancement. Can you give us just a brief description of what each one of those are?
Yeah, Chair Kip, there's I think 2, 4, 6 or 7 of them in this capital program.
Yes.
And I'll just go down the list here. The bed tax or the accommodation tax, that's money that comes from when you stay in a hotel, and there's a certain percentage that comes back to the Department of Commerce, and a portion of that comes to the department for maintenance of state park sites. And that, I believe it's 6.5% of 4%. So there's a formula for it that State Parks has received for many, many years for maintenance. And the original intent of that was people visiting Montana, they stay in state parks. Some of this funding should go back to maintenance of the state parks. So that is about 1.4 million this biennium. The motorboat fuel tax, that's a calculation made through the Department of Revenue of motorboat fuel used in Montana. And we receive a portion of that from the Department of Revenue that comes back for improvements or work in state parks. Because again, many of our state parks are water-based. The general license account, that is just what it is. That's the big department account. And there's a big help this time of 2 million going into the parks program to do improvements statewide at state parks. That is, I would term that a fairly new funding source. It's been a great benefit. It saves a like amount of parks earned revenue, and it allows us to get more done. Parks earned revenue, that's about 18% of the capital program of the 7 million at about 1.27 million. That's funding that comes from the light vehicle registration. It comes from camping fees, firewood sales, all of that kind of thing that's lumped into parks earned revenue. The Smith Corridor enhancement account, That's funding that's earmarked only for the Smith River. And the funding source for that is $50 of each commercial outfitter fee. A commercial client fee is $100 for an outfitter to take a commercial client down the river. $50 of that is earmarked for the corridor enhancement account. And then all the revenues from the $5 super permit chances, those go into the corridor enhancement account. And then 5% of all the other Smith River fees generated, with the exception of the $10 application fee, those go into the Smith Corridor Enhancement account. So that's an earmarked standalone account that only applies to the Smith River. And then the private funding, that in this case was the Parks Foundation, their efforts of the grant for the work at Fort Owen. And we do get other private stuff that comes in periodically that we handle outside the legislative process. But this one was so large. This was kind of an unusual one and a good benefit. So we took it through the legislative process to get authority to expend it. So those are the 6 funding sources of this capital program for the biennium.
Thanks for the clarification, Tom. That helps me a lot.
Yep.
Are there any other questions for Tom, Member Brown?
Yes, so Tom, what is the timing of the bed tax? And because 2020 probably was way down because of the COVID and lack of tourists.
You know, Chairman Kipp, Member Brown, I don't have a good answer on that as far as a delay or how that is calculated, but we do have a good funding source this time, and I'll research that and get back to the chair and the board members on that. But I'll give you an answer on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? Okay, would someone like to make a motion on Tom's presentation?
Mr. Chairman,
Member Mo?
I move to approve the 11 proposed parks capital projects outlined above, totaling $7,040,000 for implementation statewide in the Montana State Park System.
Okay, Member Mo made the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Member Brown seconds that motion. Katie, do we have anyone that would like to comment on this?
Chair Kit, members of the board, right now I'm seeing none. But again, just a reminder, it's *9 to raise your hand if you'd like to give a comment. And I'm seeing none.
Okay. So since there are no questions to the board, let's vote on the motion. That motion again is the Parks and Recreation Board approve the 11 proposed park capital projects outlined above, totaling $7,040,000 for implementation statewide in the Montana Park System. That was motion was made by Member Mo, and then Member Brown seconded that motion. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. Thanks, Tom.
Yes, thank you.
Next, Beth Shoemate, Fish, Wildlife and Parks Administrator, will present the next item, Lone Pine State Park acquisition. Beth, are you ready?
I am, Chair Kip, members of the board, Director Warsack. This agenda item is the Lone Pine State Park acquisition. And you have the materials in your board packet and also a map of this proposed acquisition. So for any of you who have not had the pleasure of visiting Lone Pine State Park, it is truly a remarkable 270-acre property that offers diverse visitor amenities, as well as an outstanding visitor center that provides all sorts of educational opportunities and a beautiful trail system. It's very close to Kalispell, just outside the city limits on the west side, and trail users can access the Kalispell bypass trail system, which then connects them to that lower side of Lone Pine State Park. The 7-mile trail system within the existing park footprint is very much an important feature and area of that Flathead Valley trail system. Visitation is steadily increasing. We are now seeing over 100,000 people a year to Lone Pine. And recently an opportunity has been brought before FWP to consider acquiring a 9-acre undeveloped property that adjoins Lone Pine State Park on 2 sides. The property is ideally located, as you can see on the map, and very topographically suited to provide for expansion of the park's archery range, as well as that interwoven trail network, while protecting the important backdrop to the west side of Kalispell. Lone Pine offers the only public and free developed archery range to our knowledge in the Flathead Valley and has been in operation for nearly 4 decades. The increase in self-registration at the archery range has increased by 90% just in the past 2 years, making this the perfect opportunity to possibly consider an expanded archery service with more variety of targets and angles. The local community assistance is available to facilitate a purchase option or possibly bridge fund the acquisition if necessary to secure this opportunity. Proposal alternatives and analysis would be developed by FWP upon endorsement by the board and released in a draft environmental assessment for public review and comment. And with this information, I'll stand for any questions, and also want to just mention again that we also have Dave Landstrom on Zoom still, as well as I believe Jim Williams, for any of those detailed questions about Lone Pine or this possible acquisition.
Okay, thank you, Beth. Any questions from the members? I guess I have one about the archery range. The Flathead Valley Archery Club runs that and provides the targets and the maintenance of that portion of the park.
Chair Kip and members of the board, the Flathead Valley Archery Range is very much a key partner, but as I understand it, they actually operate under a special use permit, and it's actually managed, and all of the oversight is accomplished by our park staff that is on site at Lone Pine State Park. So it's much more of a partnership type operation that we have with Flathead Valley Archery Range, but I'm going to let Dave talk about any more details that you might want to share.
Thank you, Beth. Chair Kip, members of the board, Beth is correct. We have a close working relationship with the Flathead Valley Archers, and they conduct annual archery competitions at the park. But the operations and maintenance of that site is accomplished by our on-site staff there.
Okay. A question to Dave then. The special use permit is, they would have to have liability insurance that co-insures the Fish, Wildlife and Parks of the state of Montana for this
Chair
activity?
Kip, that is correct. That's a tenet of our special use and commercial use permits, is that the sponsor carry liability insurance and name FWP as co-insured, and they typically provide a copy of that rider. And in this case, they'll typically do an event rider, so they're not buying that insurance all the time, but they'll buy it for the event itself.
Okay. Any other questions from the board members?
Yeah.
Member Loomis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Look at the map of that. It kind of looks like a great acquisition is the way it kind of fills in the corner there, and it seems like the land would be, kind of fills in there and would make sense. And I was wondering, is there any idea what the 9-acre parcel's value is? And or do we kind of have a range, a target that it might be acquired for at this point, or is it just too early in the planning?
I'm happy to field that question. Board Member Loomis, there is an asking price of $130,000. But that, of course, part of the due diligence process that we're seeking authority to do is to do an appraisal of the property. And so the department can't pay beyond appraised value. So in our due diligence, we would explore that asking price and do appraisal work.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Member Brown, you have your hand up.
Yes. So Dave, is the seller a private party?
Board Member Brown, Chair Kip, yes. The neighbor is, like most of our neighbors, has a pretty close working relationship with the park, with the site manager, Brian Schwartz. And he approached Brian a while back and said that the family was intending to sell this parcel and, wanted to give us first right of refusal in essence. And so that's how this proposal came about.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got a follow-up question for Dave. That piece of property is above it on our map is private property?
Chair Kip, that is correct. So the park or the parcel, the subject parcel is bordered by state park on two sides.
Yes.
And bordered on two additional sides by private owners, correct.
So is the private party that is willing to sell this or part with it, are they still retaining some property in that area? Or is this the only piece they had?
Chair Kip, I'm not actually certain of that. They don't own the adjoining property there. So whether they have other property in the county or in the vicinity, I'm not entirely sure. I think they must because they have a home site. So I'm guessing at a minimum, they own a residential property somewhere in the Calsburg area.
I just wondered if they bordered what they were interested in parting with. So any other questions from the board? Okay. Would someone care to make a motion on this presentation?
Chairman Kip?
Loomis, there you are.
Let's see, I'm just trying to. I would move that the Parks and Recreation Board endorse the proposal to negotiate acquisition of the 9-acre adjoining property as a possible addition to the Lone Pine State Park and complete associated analysis.
Second.
Member Loomis moved that the Parks and Recreation Board endorse the proposal to negotiate an acquisition of the 9 acres adjoining property as a possible addition to Lone Pine State Park and complete the associated analysis. Member Mo seconded that motion. So thanks for the motion. Katie, do we have anyone that would like to, from the public, that would like to comment on this?
Chair Kip, members of the board, I'm seeing none, but again, just a reminder, *9 to raise your hand. And I'm seeing none.
Okay, then let's vote on that motion. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed or anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes with a vote of 5-0. Okay, next on our agenda, Zach Zepfel, Fish, Wildlife and Parks Legal Counsel will present on Hell Creek State Park concessionary agreement extension. Zach, are you ready?
I am. Chairman Kip, members of the board, Director Warsack, Zach Zipfel, legal counsel for the department. And I am here to present the Hell Creek concession agreement for the board's consideration today. Just by way of refreshing your memory, Hell Creek State Park, you last heard about it about a month ago when we presented to you a proposal to extend the lease agreement that the department has with the Army Corps of Engineers for the 337-acre site. And at that time, we indicated to you that we would come back to you with a proposal to extend the concession agreement for Hell Creek Marina. Hell Creek Marina, of course, is the concessionaire at the park, provides a variety of visitor services to the visiting public. The proposal before you today is to essentially extend that concession agreement to bring it into line with the 2-year term of the lease agreement so that the two are in alignment and will end at the same time, essentially. The board is being asked to consider this pursuant to its statutory authority under Montana Code Annotated 23-1-102 to approve department concession agreements. I think a couple of you at least were around the last time we did this with Hell Creek extending the lease or extending the concession agreement to bring it in line with the lease with the Army Corps. For those of you who remember that process, we're essentially doing the same thing here today. And in fact, if you look at the extension of the concession agreement and compare it to the old one, it is virtually identical to what we did in the past. So with that, and unless you have any questions, that's the proposal before you now.
Okay, do we have any questions from the board members? Okay, I guess I have one. The lease agreement with the Army Corps, we have a 2-year lease with pending 1-year leases if needed. The concessionaires agreement just states the 2-year extension. Do we need to have something else in there?
Chairman, members of the board, that's a good question. And I think that a couple things to consider there. One, option agreements are fairly common in real estate transactions, and those are functionally option agreements in the lease. With the concession agreement, it's structured a little bit differently. It's a contract that was negotiated, I believe, back in the 1990s. And if you look at that, what it has is it essentially has a right of first refusal built into it for Hell Creek Marina, provided that they've been in good standing in providing services to the public. The way I would look at it is it sort of functions the same way as those 1-year extensions. Certainly, if we get to the point of where we do have to exercise those options on the lease, we would also probably be in a position to come back and do a corresponding extension of the concession agreement with the board as well.
Okay, thank you. Hank's comments early about the Army Corps of Engineers and going there. Where are we at with this proposal and your comments, Hank?
Mr. Chair, members, good question. Where we're at is we've got a new individual at the Corps Engineers. It's a Sheila Newman. She's the Chief of Operations Division, and her and Colonel Himes are coming out to look at this. And I'm going to also bring Chairman Gray from Little Shell. So we're going to meet with Clint, fly a look at it, and we're going to try to come up with a solution to make sure we meet all the requirements the Corps has asked for. We get all this thing put together, and then we work on a transition to have the Little Shell take it over. So that's where we're at. So the 3rd is when we're going to be flying out to look at it. They have not signed this agreement yet. You know, Clinton, the Thomases and I have. It's just a concurrence with the Corps of Engineers. So we're going to get them to sign that.
Okay, then a question for Zach. Then we could go ahead and make a motion and vote on accepting this with the Thomases today. And then once the Army Corps signs, then everything would move forward.
Chairman Kip, that's correct. The board's approval of the concession agreement is essentially the final step in the process from the department standpoint. And at that point, it's in the Corps' hands.
Okay, Member Mo, you have your hand up.
Maybe this is the same question that you were asking, Mr. Chairman, and I just didn't understand it. But in the event that we effectuate that transition to the Little Shell before our proposed extension deadline of 2 years, how would that affect this particular extension with the concessionaire?
Chairman Kip, members of the board, Member Mo, in that event, if we were at that point, keeping in mind that there's still discussions that we need to have with the Little Shell about what transition would look like. In all likelihood, in that scenario, the contract with Hell Creek Marina would be assigned to the Little Shell. And then at the termination of that 2-year period, it would be up to Little Shell, Hell Creek Marina, and the Corps to negotiate whatever they see as appropriate going forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from board members? Okay, seeing none, would someone like to make a motion on this presentation?
I will.
Okay,
So
Member Brown.
I move to approve the Parks Division proposal to offer the private concessionaire at Hell Creek State Park an extension to the existing lease agreement through April 30th, 2023.
Okay, do we have a second to that?
I second that.
Okay, Member Loomis seconds that. All right, Katie, again, do we have anybody on the queue?
Chair Kip, members of the board, we do, and I do believe this is probably why most people are dialed in since we haven't heard any comment yet. So I just want to quickly remind people of the directions. It's *9 to raise your hand. I will unmute people one at a time and you will get a notification when you are unmuted. Please state your name, where you're from, and if you represent an organization. Please keep to the time limit. Colleen is going to be keeping that limit and we'll let you know when you've reached your time. So please be cognizant of that. We want everybody to have a chance to have time to give comment. And please keep your comments on the scope of the agenda item, which is the concession agreement extension. We'll get started here.
Thank you, Katie.
Hello, this is Mary Beth Kibler, Kibler Outfitting and Charter Fishing. My question on this is the parks and the Thomases signed this extension on April 29th. So why wasn't it a done deal at that point? And why did it take a month to get it done, to get it approved by you? You've been holding up the outfitting industry out of Hell Creek and making it extremely hard on those who operate out of Hell Creek for this past 2 months. Can you answer that for me, please?
Mary Beth, We're just taking comment here
Okay, that is a comment on that, sir.
no, you asked to answer that.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then let me go into comments, and it may take me a wee bit. And at that point, I will ask to come back if I don't get it finished. I woke up at 2 o'clock this morning,
Okay.
wrote down my thoughts about what I needed to speak to you about on this.
Okay.
And we all are responsible. You know, the Corps of Engineers subleases Hell Creek to the state parks. The parks is responsible for the contract with Hell Creek Marina, and Hell Creek Marina must have an agreement with them for the outfitters to have a commercial use permit called a fourth party agreement. Okay, we all must meet these deadlines for everyone to be in compliance. And the compliance part starts in a reverse process. We must submit all of our paperwork in December. Mine was in December 8th. And I got an email back in about March from Tom Sushi here that I was all good to go to work on April 1st, providing you had a fourth party agreement, or if I went through a third party permit. On May 5th, it looked like we weren't going to get there in time for, we've had clients booked. It appeared we weren't going to have this agreement signed. And it was signed on April 29th. But the Corps did not sign it for whatever reasons. And if they had a problem, they should have took that up with the Corps or with the parks prior to the signing of that agreement.
Chair Kip, the 2-minute time limit is up.
Okay, Mary Beth, thanks for your comments.
I would like to come back at a later time if possible to finish what I have to say.
Okay, we'll see how much time we have. Katie, have you got anybody else in the queue?
Chair Kit, members of the board, I'm actually not seeing any other hands raised right now, but I just remind those that it's *9 to raise your hand. And if there are people that are on the computer, it looks like some people might be on the computer. I think you can just hover down below on the Zoom screen and raise your hand as well.
Okay, I see Member Brown has his hand up, but I think we should take all the public comments and then we'll have discussion.
I have phone number 483 ending in 483. You're unmuted.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Mary Kent. I'm from Jordan, Montana. I'd like to defer my time to Mary Beth so we could continue to hear what she has to say, if that's possible.
Okay, thank you.
Chair Kit, members of the board, I am seeing no new commenters, but I do see Mary Beth with her hand up.
Okay, Mary Beth, go ahead, please, and try to keep it to a couple minutes if you can.
Thank you for letting me continue. I appreciate that. And thank you, Mary Kent. I appreciate you allowing that as well. You know, the holdup on this, the process of the parks here, as I understand the situation, and correct me if I'm wrong, the parks is the one who handles the agreement between the parks and the fourth party agreement and the agreement to let the concessionaire go on. You know, as of today, the Corps has not, they're the only ones that haven't signed this paper. It has been in the works, and our paperwork has been in the works since December. How do you how long do you expect us just to hang and rattle? We've been rescheduling, we've been staying within the perimeters of what we're supposed to be. But how long can we, I mean, I thought this process was to make it faster and better for the use of the public. We are not seeing that down here at Hell Creek. You know, they say that the reason for the transition process of the campgrounds to the little shell was not to disrupt service to the public. We are a long, far cry from that as of today. What does it take, and why is the Corps holding off on signing that agreement? I guess that's about all I have to say on that, if you can't answer me.
Okay, thank you. So if we have no more public comments, we'll do some board discussion here. After having the public comments. Member Brown, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just going to suggest that we allow Mary Beth her additional time, but after her last statements, do we have an answer for her?
Zach, how do we handle this?
Chairman Kip, members of the board, I guess the simple answer from my perspective is no one here can speak on behalf of the Corps. The simple matter is this is the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife and Parks and the State Parks and Recreation Board. I have not been involved in conversations with the Corps, so I couldn't even begin to speculate on from their perspective what the answer to that question is.
Okay. Member Mo.
Zach, could you tell me whether this meeting to approve this extension, until we have that, the State Parks Division doesn't really have the okay to go forward?
Member Mo, I'm not sure I'm following your question.
I am asking whether our approval is necessary for the signature to be official.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
And that's pursuant to 23-1-102. The department, negotiates and brings forward a concession agreement, but that agreement is not legally binding until the board approves it.
And if I could speak to the motion then, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
I regret the inconvenience that has been caused to Ms. Kibler and to others. I think we've moved as expeditiously as we could, having first of all agreed to the initial extension. And although I had some concerns that the transition might occur before this period and the concessionaire would be left hanging, I'm satisfied with the answers that I've received here that we will honor our agreement with them. And I think it's really important to have some stability in that area for the concessionaires. So I'm in favor of the motion before us.
Okay. Any other discussion from board members? Member Brown.
Yes, so do we need the Corps' signature to validate the contract?
Zach, can you answer that?
Chairman Kip, members of the board, Member Brown, in the lease agreement that we have with the Army Corps, there's a provision in there that requires them to approve sort of any third-party agreements. I think the easiest way, and in fact, the way they did that in 2018 when we extended the concession agreement, was to sign, is to you show your approval by signing the agreement, essentially, and that's consistent with past practice.
So can we approach them and say we need to get this signed promptly?
Director Warsack, excuse me.
Chairman Kip, members, and Member Brown, that's exactly what I'm doing on the 3rd when we fly out there. We're trying to get them together, understand what the issues were, come together, make sure we can take care of the issues for the future, make all the parties understand what we need to do, go forth and get the court assigned this so we can move forward. I've been pushing that for a long time. So yes, that's where we're at.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion that the Parks and Rec Board approve the Parks Division proposal offer the private concessionaires at Hell Creek State Park on extension of existing lease agreement through April 30th of 2023. Refresh me, who made that motion?
I did.
Okay, Member Brown made that motion, and who seconded that?
I did.
And Jody seconded that. Okay, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No. Okay, so that motion is passed with a vote of 5-0. Okay. So that's the last of our agenda items. Now's the time that the general public can comment about anything that is not on today's agenda, any new items. Katie, do we have anyone?
Yes, Chair Kip, members of the board, we got a couple here.
Hello, this is Kobe Gerke. My name is spelled Cobygierke, and I am the Executive Director of the Montana State Parks Foundation. So I'm calling in today to introduce myself to the new board members whom I've yet to meet in person. Chair Kip, I see that you have my calendar on your wall behind your desk. I really appreciate that. Administrator Shoemate, I also noticed our calendar on your wall as well. So good to see some of our promotional materials are being used and loved by members involved in the Parks Board and staff. So I'll keep my comments relatively short, but I just wanted to briefly talk to you about what the Montana State Parks Foundation is and what we do. We're a private 501c3. We're not a government entity. And we focus on communicating about Montana State Parks. We advocate for Montana State Parks, and we fund improvements in the parks. And you've heard about a lot of those improvements today from various sources. As we look at what our year ahead looks like, we're going to be focused on things like alternative lodging at Makoshika, where we're erecting a yurt. In fact, I'll be delivering that yurt to the park next week. Chief Plentycoo, where we're funding the development of that tiny house for staff and volunteer housing. We had Member Brown, as well as some other very generous donors in the Billings area, helped us fully fund that project, and hopefully the first of many. We're also looking at cabins at Finley Point, where there were plans in place in the past to develop cabins at that park, but budgets fell short and those cabin sites were turned into tent sites. So we're hoping to complete that plan that once existed in the past. You've heard about Fort Owen, where we're making our largest single investment to date. Just in the last 6 months, we were able to reimburse the state for the cost of the acquisition of the 1 acre just south of the existing state park. We're watching closely and working with the folks at State Parks to fund the development of that parking lot, improve the road, the fencing, and we'll be working with them in the year ahead to redevelop the interpretive plan for that park and to implement it in a meaningful way and to restore and protect some of the historic structures on site. You also heard about Summers Beach. In addition to the $100K capital line item that Tom Riley mentioned, we're raising money right now for Summers Beach. And we were offered a $100,000 challenge grant from the Slider family to, if we could go out and match that money. And I'm happy to report that as of right now, we've raised about $80,000, but we could really use your help along the way to push us over the top and fully match that 100,000 so that we can help fund the initial development and get that park open for the public. So in addition to that, we've got a lot of great programs ongoing where we talk about our parks in our weekly park showcase that goes out to about 130,000 distinct emails each week. We also recently received a grant from the Montana Office of Tourism and Business Development to develop an interactive map of state parks across Montana, as well as trip planning tools. You can see more of that on our website, and you can learn a lot more about what we do at montanastateparks.org. So with that, I'll yield the rest of my time and hopefully get you guys out to lunch here soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Colby. Katie, do we have anyone else?
Yes, Chair Kit, members of the board, we have a couple more here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
I can, Colin. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Colin Cooney. I'm the Montana representative for Trout Unlimited. I'm based here in Helena. And I also just wanted to come on today to introduce myself as well to the new members of the board. And thank you for the opportunity to comment. Trout Unlimited works very closely with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and the Parks Board on projects and a lot of the things that you guys have been talking about today. And we look forward to continuing that with the new members in the future. We also work very hard up at the Capitol during the legislative session to make sure that the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and the Parks Department has adequate funding for, again, a lot of the projects you heard about today and the projects that affect cold water fisheries. Secondly, and I know it was just an informational part of the presentation this morning, but we just want to express our support for the proposed updates to the management plans for the several different parks you heard about. We think it's definitely a time to do so, especially on the Smith River. It's crazy to think that plan's already 10 years plus old, and with the amount of things that have changed in that corridor and on that park, especially with the amount of use, we definitely think it's time for an update on that plan. So that's what I have to say today, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Colin. Katie, do you have anyone else?
Yes, Chair Kit, members of the board, I have Mary Beth Kibler on.
I see that you had just had recognized us again, and I want to thank you all for moving forward. Of course, I wish it could have been done a month ago when right after that was signed, but I thank you so much for your actions today on the Hell Creek, moving forward on Hell Creek State Park. It will be most helpful. And thank you, Hank, for all your hard work in this situation. You all give us hope.
All right. Thank you, Mary Beth. Katie, anyone else?
Chair Kip, it looks like that's it.
Okay, if there are no more commenters, that would conclude today's meeting. Our next board meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, August 11th. Do we have a time for that yet, Colleen, I guess?
Chair Kip, there is not a time set up. Most meetings start at 9 o'clock. It all depends on what's on the agenda and how large the agenda is.
Okay.
Right now, it's tentatively set for 9.
Well, we know the date. We can get it on the calendars.
Yeah.
Okay, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Does Mr. Warsach want to say something?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, if you indulge me for just a couple minutes, you brought up about the volunteers at Bannock, and
Yes.
We have a video that we put out, and one of the videos we put out looking at Montana, and it goes exactly to that. The volunteers, it's a couple minutes long. I think it would be well worth the board to watch it and the public to watch it. So if you indulge us, I will have Beth turn that on.
Oh, I'd love to watch it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Kip, for allowing us this opportunity. And this is a partnership effort that we have with the Governor's Office of Community Service and one of our employees, Joe Neiman Session, who actually just left FWP and took a position over there at that office. Congratulations to him, but really it was in part because of his efforts and dedication to community service and all of the good work that we bring with getting these volunteers on site at our parks. So I'm just going to do a quick share screen, make sure I do the right one, and play this video for you. Hopefully this all works. See, computer's acting just a speck slow. Okay, here we go.
More than a year ago, Shaw Rose came home from her corporate job and told her husband, Bill, there has got to be more to life.
And I came home from this rough day at work and I said, I think I might be done now. And I realized that my happiest day of every month is when I'm volunteering for that third grade class, or I'm just visiting with the folks at the hospice center. So why don't we just take a year to volunteer?
What started as a couple's project has exploded into a year to volunteer, a group of RVers who travel the country and perform community service projects.
And our goal is just to come in and be the purest form of volunteerism possible, which is expect nothing in return, no quid pro quo. We swoop in like ninjas and we swoop out again and hopefully do some good.
This spring, a year to volunteer spent 2 weeks at Bannock State Park, helping with some much needed restoration.
So many people benefit from state park systems that when you can give them a leg up, man, what else do you need, right?
This building.
And with the Roses managing the projects, volunteers can show up, give back, and have some fun.
We find out where to go, we find out what to do, we post it on social media, and people just come and join in. It's really amazing, and it really warms your heart because people want to help if you make it easy for them.
The Roses have found meaning in this work and hope others will too.
I just want to do something that matters. I don't care about the headstone, just knowing at the end of my life, I did something good and I did something that mattered.
We have 1 million nomads out there on the road, and if we can capture them and pull them in to do projects like this, they can teach their kids about volunteerism, they can teach their family members about service, and man, it just makes the world a better place, right?
I'm Winston Greeley, out among Montana's fish, wildlife, and parks.
Perfect way to end.
That was excellent, Beth. After going down there and seeing the work and then seeing this video, just wonderful.
Wow.
Sorry.
I thought I'd put it in perspective for you all.
Thank you, Director Warsack. Okay, guess would someone like to make a motion then to adjourn this meeting?
I move we adjourn.
Member Moa moved to adjourn the meeting. A second?
I'll second.
Okay, Member McLean seconds that motion. All in favor of adjournment? Say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Nope. All right. Well, thank you guys for being there, and it was seemed like it went a pretty good meeting today. Thank you.
Good job. Thank you.
Thank you all.
This is after the meetings, but I wanted to ask Director Warsack, Hank, would you like me to come to that Hell Creek meeting June 3rd when you're gathering up there? I'd be happy to join you.
You know, let me run that by the other people.
Right. Just think about it. I don't want to.
I appreciate that. I think it's, yeah, I think it'd be really good to have a board member there to see what's going on.
Okay, so, I'd be happy to. Just
yeah,
I'll
let you know the dates and the time. I mean, the time that we're coming.
Yeah.
It's still 10.
When and where?
Yeah. So yeah, that'd be great.